few weeks ago, I made a video all about musical films I would love to see on stage. But, as I explained in that video, I'm very fussy when it comes to musicals becoming films. I have, like, a guideline, I have rules, and so within that, I also have many opinions on musicals that I really don't want to see become films. Listen, I've been burnt many times, and so I feel like any musical becoming a film, I'm very hesitant. Even some of the ones on the want list had caveats and fears attached to them. So let's today look at the flip side of that. Today I have picked 10 musicals, and we're going to walk through them one by one, and I'm going to explain why I think it would be difficult to adapt them to screen, and why I ultimately don't want to see that happen. And let me tell you, there's some surprises on this list. If you know my opinions on musicals, if you know which musicals I like, I think you're going to be quite shocked when you see some of my choices here. Hell, there is not a single musical I dislike on this list. But if you haven't seen my face before, hi, I'm Ellie, I talk about theatre. I am the most chaotic theatre person on the internet. I do reviews, I do discussions, I do versus brackets, rankings, game shows, and so much more. And if any of that sounds interesting to you, please consider hitting like and subscribe, it really helps me out, it helps out the channel. But let's dive in to musicals I don't want to see become films. Hollywood, go away. No, get out. Now, this video is going to be quite standalone to my last part. You can go watch the last part first if you want to, then come back, or you can go watch it afterwards. I am, however, going to explain again my guidelines, my opinions on musical films, and what makes them work and what makes them not work. This is going to be basically the same as the last video. You can sit for it again if you'd like to, but if you don't want to, you can skip straight ahead to the list. I'll do something. Maybe someone will put a timestamp in the comments. Maybe I'll do it. Maybe it's right here on screen right now. I don't know. But the gist of it is this. Theatre and film are two very different mediums, and these mediums have a lot of different techniques that massively affect the storytelling of what you are presenting. The biggest thing is suspense of disbelief. When you are watching a piece of theatre, you are sat there in a theatre among a bunch of different people, and you can tell what is in front of you is not real. You can see the set, you can see the actors, so your brain naturally disconnects you from it, which makes something like musical theatre a bit more viable on stage. Because your brain is going, oh, this isn't real life, you don't really think twice about people breaking out into song. And this allows a very different tone to film. Film is more of a snapshot of real life. It's a lot more grounded, it's a lot more natural, and because of this, musical theatre can sometimes struggle to adapt itself to screen. So within this, I have two criteria, which I point to, which allows you to adapt musical theatre to screen. Number one, you gotta stylize. Breaking out to song is unnatural, then present it as so. Give us big sequences, strange cinematography, and then you can kind of build back in that suspense of disbelief. Treating them like dream sequences, or separating the style of filmmaking within the text and within the musical theatre of it all can provide that suspense of disbelief that you don't naturally get on film. And number two, you just need to adapt. I think the worst thing you can do is just lift the script from a musical and just place it on screen. Because pace is so different in a film. Locations and set changes and everything makes the flow of a film much quicker than the flow of a musical or a stage show. Some songs, some scenes just won't work naturally on screen. So things have to be left on the cutting room floor. Or you could go in the complete opposite direction and look at something like Wicked, which saw that musical and decided that it would be more beneficial to give each scene a bit more time. and fill in additional moments and expand that musical, splitting it into two. While these are two very different approaches, they're both ways of adapting a piece from one medium to another. This is not just the case for like stage to screen, but also books, real life. Things, when you adapt them, change, and it's most likely for the better. So, with that out of the way, once again, let's dive into my musicals that I think have too many challenges to adapt them to screen. I've ranked these in a rough order, so we're going to start at number 10 and work our way all the way to number 1, the musical that I think is least suited to being adapted to the screen. Number 10, Next to Normal. Now, I adore Next to Normal. I think this is a gorgeous musical with so many layers, and I think that there's a world, funny reference to Next to Normal there, where this musical could potentially work on screen, but it's going to be very difficult. I will explain the plot of Next to Normal to you, and then maybe you'll see where I'm coming from. Next to Normal is the story of a family. On the outside, they look very normal, but you dive in and you start to realize many of the mental health challenges that this family is facing. A mother with a certain bipolar disorder, a father trying to keep everything together, a daughter who feels left out and forgotten about. And it's hard to dive into this musical more plot-wise without giving spoilers, and I want people who haven't seen Next to Normal to go away, watch the pro shot that comes out, when I'm filming this tomorrow, but it's already in cinemas. Go watch the pro shot. Go do it. Go watch it, because it's stunning. But I think that's where Next to Normal shines the most, in pro shots and on stage, because this subject matter is dark. And I think this is one of the places where it's really hard to stylize, because you've got these numbers and you've got this story that deserves a very grounded telling. There's moments of campness and silliness within Next to Normal. If you look at numbers like My Psychopharmacologist and I, it does venture into a little bit of black comedy. But if you're not presenting moments like I Miss the Mountains or There's a World with the level of sincerity and depth that they deserve, you're not going to do justice to this musical. And there's the problem. How do you stylize something that feels like it needs to be so grounded? That's a lot of where my problems with something like the Les Mis movie musical came. Because that subject matter is so challenging and it's so sad and dark and it's got a lot of things you have to take very, very seriously, you struggle to stylize it in places. And especially when you hand it to a director whose whole style and filmmaking is so grounded, it just kind of comes off as one note. And the music within it kind of feels jarring, which is not what you want in a musical. Because I love music in a musical. How can you go wrong? That would be my biggest fear about a Next to Normal musical. Because you want them to tackle it with such sincerity, but it's also difficult to do so and also stylize. But with that said, I do think with a right director who can tackle a lot of that and can be very creative, there could be a world where they manage to do it. I think the character of Gabe might be a good angle to take that, but it would take a lot of rewrites, it would take a lot of adjustments. I think there would be a lot of material left on the cutting room floor, which would likely upset some fans of the musical. It's definitely a challenging one to adapt. One that I feel like if they announced it, I would be quite scared, but I would give it a chance. Which is why it's placed here, rather than any higher on the list. I was debating it in my head, not even including it. I had like an honourable mention that I was going to swap off, but I feel like Next to Normal is a challenging one to do. Equally so though, I struggle to cast a Next to Normal film in my head. I think there's definitely some cast members who could cross over. If you did it quickly enough, Jack Wolf could still do that role on screen. And he's someone who's probably big enough now where he would suit being in a film version of Next to Normal. But a character like Diana, so difficult to play. And of course, while in a perfect world we would see musical films cast new stars, it's kind of understandable that you're going to Hollywood and you're making a musical film. That's kind of the place where you are going to get celebrity casting. It's not really stunt casting when this is kind of their domain, you know? But those roles are difficult. Those roles are very hard things. And so a lot of it is just kind of this very difficult balance to strike. That means that if they ever announced it, I think my hopes would be fairly low. But thank the Lord we have the Pro Shot. And also a new production. We're already getting a regional premiere for Next to Normal next year, which is phenomenal. Fantastic. I think that's where this musical shines. It's not one that I feel like I would be adamantly against, but I'm worried. Number 9, we have the musical falsettos. Oh boy, I love falsettos. The late great William Finn gave us so many wonderful musicals. But his most well-known and his most cherished is Falsettos, made up of 2 different one-act musicals, March of the Falsettos and Falsettoland, surrounding a found family. Marvin, his ex-wife Trina, his son Jason, his new lover Whizzer, their psychiatrist Mendel, and the lesbians from next door. It's this beautiful musical set in the 1980s, and when you hear queer stories set in the 1980s, you kind of know what you're gonna get tonally here. Now, I struggled a little bit with placing falsettos because I feel very similar to it as I do to something like Next to Normal. But something that could make falsettos a bit easier to adapt is that it's weird. It's weird. William Finn loves some weird, silly guys. And let me say, this family, they got some weird, silly guys. Like, a song like March of the Falsettos is like a fever dream. It's delightfully strange and baffling. But equally so, especially in Act 2, it gets dark. And there's a lot of really challenging material that it has to cover. I think it's a balance that it could definitely strike well. But I think the thing that makes it land on this list, whereas I feel like if those were the only struggles, I feel like I would be like, yeah, I think in a perfect world this could work. The big problem comes with the fact that this is a sung-through musical. Now, I'm going to give you a challenge in the comments down below, because I have started to come to the suspicion. I'm starting to come to the conclusion that sung-through musicals just do not work on screen. I don't know if it's just me being burnt one too many times, but listen, Les Mis. I know a lot of people love the Les Mis film, I don't. I've given you my reasons of why. Rent. There was a lot of problems with that adaptation, and I don't think it's helped by the fact that it's a sung-through musical. I think the only musical I can think of that might be an exception to this rule is maybe something like Jesus Christ Superstar. But even that's had like a good film adaptation and a less good film adaptation. I would honestly love to be proved wrong in this. And like, maybe one day I'll make a full video once I have watched more, once I've explored this more, giving my full scientific thesis on why I don't think they work. But I think they struggle. And I think the reason they struggle is because you haven't got that downtime. You haven't got the book there as well. So everything within it has to be stylized. And when everything is stylized, nothing will be. And so if you've got this musical where it jumps around a lot in tone, it's got some really serious and hard-hitting moments. If you don't have the easy choice of going to like a typical book and script to ground it, you're going to struggle with that tone and that balance. And the other thing about a sung-through musical that makes it struggle, especially when it comes to adaptation, is that it's very easy to look at a script and look at a scene and readjust and shift. It's much more difficult to do that with a song. You can cut sections, you can give slight rewrites, but that's a lot more rigid. There's a lot more freedom that you get when adapting a script than you have when you're adapting a song in a musical. That's why when you look at the music in many adaptations, the songs don't change that much. There may be slight orchestration things, There might be additional lyrics or slight shifts and changes. This is not unheard of, but it's more difficult to do. So when you're given a sung-through musical, you kind of have to stick to what the musical sets. And so you don't have the freedom to adapt very well to a new medium, and therefore the whole product could kind of struggle as a whole. It's so much harder to hit my criteria. And that's my thesis, and I'd like to be proved wrong. I may be forgetting one that really, really worked. And I'd like to dive into this. This is a whole video. I'm writing this down. This is a new video idea. So while I feel like there's elements of falsettos that could really work on screen, and while I would love to see it manage to adapt itself into that for a wider audience, I feel like there's too many things going against it. And the saddest thing going against it is that if they did adapt this and they needed to rewrite things, we no longer have William Finn with us, sadly. So these rewrites would have to be retroactive and not done from the original creative, which I feel like would be a shame. Because especially without his input, you kind of want to maintain that work as is. Which is probably why falsettos would be much more suited to stage adaptations, and maybe even a new pro shot one day. Thankfully, we do have the 2016 Broadway revival that does have that pro shot, so we've at least got falsettos forever. Number 8. Why am I so single? I know a lot of people have many opinions on why I'm so single, and I think a lot of them were fair. I had opinions on it. I had elements of it that I didn't really love, but I felt it was one rewrite away from being truly spectacular. Like, all the pieces were there, it just needed to kind of trim the fat a bit. So it's kind of weird to sit here and say, yeah, I don't want to see it go to film, because it kind of feels like I want any version of Why Am I So Single back. I'd love this musical to get another chance, especially on stage, but when it comes to film, I think this is going to struggle for multiple reasons. If you don't know, Why Am I So Single is the semi-autobiographical musical written by Toby Marlowe and Lucy Moss, the creatives of Six. This played last year at the Garrick Theatre, and explored two 20-something musical writers as they try and write a new musical. But instead, they start to explore their own sad, pathetic love lives. Their words, not mine. I think there's so much charm to this musical. I think a lot of the music is great. But I think the biggest challenge with specifically this musical, when you would be adapting it to screen, and I actually think this would be an issue if you were also doing a pro shot of this musical, is that it has the potential to become very dated very fast. Theatre is fresh every night. Musicals that have run for long periods, for years upon years, decades upon decades, have, throughout that period, shifted and changed small things. Book of Mormon has looked back on itself and adjusted some of its attitudes. They also add in additional jokes and make some of it more relevant to today. There's some more improv moments that certain shows will have. And musical theatre kind of has the freedom to do that. Because they're going on stage every single night, things can go wrong, things can be different, they can change it night by night. If there's a reference in there that worked in 2004, but doesn't work in 2025 because no one knows who that person is anymore, or a newer generation has come in and they don't really understand what that is, congratulations, you can change that. But a film is a time capsule. As we're discovering more and more with certain outdated and harmful material in film and media from decades and decades ago, or even fairly recent history, we're starting to have to tackle how film works and how we address this type of thing. Obviously, that's a very extreme example, but that even matters when it comes to small little one-handed references. And Why Am I So Single is a musical that is very of the period it's been written in. Musically, stylistically, tonally, it is so 2024. It is so Gen Z and millennial coded within how it presents the musical, how it presents the characters, the storytelling. So much so that this musical's kind of going to have to look at itself, if it ever goes on to future life, in, let's say, 10, 15 years, and decide whether it wants to adapt itself and rework itself, or if it wants to stay as a period piece. It kind of even promoted itself as a musical for now. It's that final number, what we need today. This is the musical that we need right now. Which doesn't matter when you're presenting on stage. I think none of these criticisms matter if you are watching this musical when it was presented. If a musical's going to age badly, I don't think it really matters that much if it's relevant to when you're watching it. But if you're adapting a film version of it that's going to exist forever and ever and ever, then it might be an issue. Why Am I So Single is absolutely full of this, and I love it for that. But if they were adapting it to film, then I don't know how much that would hinder Why Am I So Single. I don't want it to, but I definitely feel like it's a possibility that it could. But equally so, removing a lot of that would kind of take away a lot of the point of that musical, would take away a lot of the feelings of the creatives at that time. I don't think that's an element of Why I'm a Single that I want to change. The things I would like to change about Why I'm a Single is maybe structural, or just some slight choices here and there, or maybe some songs that cover similar choices in source material, which is the easy things to change, especially when you're adapting something to film. The tone of a piece? That's a lot harder. Which is why I think Why I'm a Single would struggle even to be made into a pro shot. I would love this musical back, please and thank you. But not on screen. Give it to me back on stage. Number 7, people will most likely disagree with me here. Hamilton. I'm not entirely against a Hamilton film. I think out of all of the ones on this list, I think this is probably the most likely to actually be adapted into a film one day. Because I was also thinking about musicals that could be as big as Wicked to adapt. Because obviously, Wicked is so connected to a lot of mainstream media that it's been really easy to market it, to commercialize it. And I was thinking, what are some other musicals that are like that, and more so from a modern perspective? And it's really only Hamilton that has kind of branched quite massively outside of the sphere of just like Broadway and musical theatre fans. I think a Hamilton film would be extremely successful. I think a Hamilton film would probably be a saviour for musical film adaptations. So why is it on this list? Number 1, it's a sung-free musical. Do I need to repeat myself? I've already spoken about this. But I do think, on the other hand, Hamilton has a lot going for it when it comes to its style and how it presents itself. That means that if there's any musical, any sung-free musical that could stylize itself all throughout, it's probably Hamilton, because it commits very strongly to the R&B and the rap. It's very cohesive in how it's presented, rather than something like Falsettos, which jumps to the wacky and the weirdness, and then also within the same musical has those absolutely heart-wrenching moments. So I do think, when we're speaking about it, Hamilton would probably be a bit easier to adapt. But I think it's going to be the rigidity of it. I think it's going to be the fact that you can't really mess around with it too much. I think Hamilton is one of those musicals that is so perfect, that is so well crafted from a book perspective and from like a musical perspective, that I almost don't want them to touch it. Out of every choice on this list, I think this is the one where I would probably be like, fair enough if you argue against this. I honestly probably could have put this one lower, but this is where it felt right to place it for me, because I think Hamilton is a hard one to adapt because the musical just kind of feels like the perfect version of it. And if we already have the pro shot, and if we already have that available on Disney Plus and everyone can see it and enjoy that original cast, then I kind of don't want to tempt fate with it. I don't even want to try. I think whatever they would do to adapt the screen would likely make it weaker. Maybe make it more fitting to screen, but as an overall project, it would probably be inferior to the stage version. Whereas what I'm looking for in adaptation is either something better or something that stands on its own. The stage version of Wicked and the film version of Wicked are so different in approach and so different in tone and so different in how they do it that they both stand on their own. The film version of Chicago takes a lot of the themes, adapts it, and ends up, in my opinion, becoming a stronger product as a whole. I don't think that would be the case with Hamilton. And honestly, I'm happy to be proven wrong. Number 6, A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder. There's a couple of musicals on this list that have a very similar theme to this musical. This is the one where I feel like it's probably easier to get away with it. And then there's one more, which we'll speak about later, where I don't think they ever could. And if they ever did, I would bow down to that person. But let's explore this musical first. A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder surrounds Monty, who finds out he is a member of this very rich family, of which his mother was cast aside from. So, to get his revenge and to climb the ranks within the family, he slowly starts to take out these family members one by one to inherit the Die-Swift name. It is camp. It is silly. It commits to that tone. And it's a tone where, because it commits so hard to that, there is a universe where maybe a absolutely bonkers filmmaker could do it justice. Do you know who could do it really weirdly? They probably never would, but I could very much see it in like a weird Wes Anderson style. Like, I'm thinking that level of stylization. If you lent into it massively in every single element of the filmmaking, you could probably end up with something that really, really worked. But I feel like there's one thing that you would probably have to lose in an adaptation of A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, where I don't know if it would be worth it, and that is the multi-rolling. A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder has this very fun creative choice where every single member of the Die-Swift family that Monty is slowly working his way through is played by the same actor. Now, it's not unheard of in film to multi-roll. Hell, if they went with this and fully committed to the bit, they could have all of the Die-Swift members actually interact with each other. But it would be a difficult thing to get right. And I think it would take a very, very committed filmmaker to achieve this correctly, to a point where I worry about it as a whole. It's kind of landed in the middle here because I'm like, you kind of have to commit so hard, and I don't know if they ever would do that. Especially for a musical like this that, you know, isn't massively popular. It won the Best Musical Tony, but it's kind of faded into obscurity since then. If you mention this musical now, it's kind of been forgotten, even with the Tony acclaim, and especially outside of America, it's less well known. There's also weird legal challenges within it, especially when it comes to, like, filmmaking, that I wonder if it would never be able to even happen legally. But I think there is a world where it could work, but I don't ever see a studio committing to it in that way where it would work. We are now halfway through my list, and we now come to number 5, Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812, which is on here for very similar reason to some other ones, so we'll kind of go through this one quite quickly. If there is anything going for Great Comet, it's its style. It commits so hard to what it is, where I honestly think there is a world where it could maybe work, but Lord, it would be difficult. My God, it would be difficult. Great Comet, if you are unaware, adapts just like 80 pages of the novel War and Peace, focusing on Pierre and Natasha. As Natasha goes through her social downfall and Pierre rises up from depressed and unsure of his place in life to finding more of a purpose for himself. It is one of the most gorgeous and well-written musicals I've ever seen on stage. And here's where the problems lie. First of all, we have the same problem that Hamilton had, within the fact that I think the musical is such a well-crafted story, and it's so tonally distinct, and it's so itself. I mean, that's the only way I can really describe it. It's so unique that I feel like a lot of audiences would be very against it, especially commercially. This would definitely have to be a film adaptation that's a lot lower budget, and within that, you kind of lose something about Great Comet that really works, which is the spectacle of it all. It's not like we haven't seen productions that have scaled this back, but part of what makes Great Comet really work is the extravagance of it all and the beauty of it all, contrasted with how these characters feel. The gravitas versus the real depression and emotion that these characters are going through. I worry that the budget would never be high enough for it to truly achieve this. It's a sung-through musical, and you know my opinions on sung-through musicals becoming films. And I feel like it would need a very specific type of filmmaker who can stylize it all the way through. There's so many caveats and questions that I would have about an adaptation of Great Comet to the screen. I feel like it would lose a lot. I think that's the main thing. And I don't know if what they can add back into it within a film adaptation would be worth losing a lot of what made Great Comet great in the first place. You're going to kind of see this become a theme with a lot of my top choices here. Because for this top 5, these are musicals that feel very committed to a certain idea that wouldn't work on screen. And if they did commit to it, it would either not work or lose something. And I feel like Great Comet would lose something. Number 4, title of show. Now, you'll be forgiven if you don't know what title of show is. It is a fairly niche musical, but this is a musical about 2 men writing a musical about 2 guys writing a musical. It is this insanely meta musical that literally documents the creation of the musical itself. I think the challenge with title of show as a film is twofold, and I honestly feel like any version of title of show that happens post the original Broadway has a very similar problem as well. Number 1, this musical is about the creation of the musical, and so if it's going to be about the creation of the musical, then why is it a film? Why is it not the musical? It kind of would necessitate that this adaptation would also add a lot of new material that would work on how they made it into a film. And by doing that, by adding that element in, you're adding so many extra people into the process that I worry that it wouldn't be the same. I worry that you'd lose title of show. Now, granted, this is questions and challenges that they faced and questions they were asked when they went to Broadway, and they made it work. I do think there's a world where they could make it work. But challenge number 2 comes in the fact that this musical does not work. It really struggles to work when it's not the people it's about. This film would need the original Broadway cast. It would need the original off-Broadway cast. And there's so many themes within the musical itself where they're speaking about recasting. Like, this is something the musical itself actually tackles. Like, they actually discussed potentially stunt casting one of the performers when they went to Broadway, and ultimately decided it wouldn't work. And future productions of title of show have been great. Like, I saw a production in London last year, and I love this musical, but it loses the meta edge a little bit when it's not those original cast members. So, you'd need the original cast members, which would make it a harder sell to a commercial audience, and would make this much more low budget, which you could probably balance in a way, but it's so many things that you have to kind of contend with, that I honestly wonder if they would ever bother. If title of show became title of musical film, then I want the original creatives, I want a whole new section added to the ending, which would make it even longer, and even harder to adapt. And also so much of it, you kind of can't massively adapt, because it's very much verbatim. So again, you've got the problem of struggling to adapt this to the screen. There's just so much there, where I kind of look at it all and go, let's keep this spark of magic to where it originally was. This is a musical where I really wish they'd done a pro shot. Because I think a pro shot would have been the perfect full stop to title a show. But we don't live in that universe, sadly. We are now into our top 3. And number 3, we have 6. Yes, I am really sad that it's not 6th place, but this is the right placement for it. At least 3, if you double that, then it is 6. So technically, I did it like that. You're welcome. If you've been living under a rock for the past, 7 years, 6 is a musical about the 6 wives of Henry VIII. It is a musical themed like a concert. Some people like to say that it's not a musical, it's a concert. It's a musical. Let's be real, it's just stylized in its staging to be like a concert. Doesn't mean it's not a musical. But there within lies the problem for a 6th film, because so much of it is set up to be live. It is set up to be this one moment within the audience and the queens giving you that concert performance. So you haven't really got a natural way to adapt the screen because you can't really take it outside of that concept. You could film it in a giant stadium and do it like that, and there lies within the problem of then you're just kind of doing a pro shot. And the thing is, the pro shot kind of already solved this issue. If you go and see the pro shot, which you absolutely should, it's gorgeous. I can't wait for them to release it wherever they're going to release it on streaming, because I would love to see it again, please. The pro shot managed to set it within this world, staged it within the vaudeville, but also used the way that they filmed that pro shot to tell that story. There's moments where they shut the camera off and switch to some people within the audience just filming it on their phones. Everything the pro shot did is kind of how you would adapt this to film. So when that already exists, and that is probably the best way to adapt 6 to screen, I just straight up don't think we would ever need a film version. This isn't a case where the pro shot and the film could coexist, because I think the stylization of it means that the film would basically be the pro shot. Because the only other way I can see it happening is if you stylized it to be like a Netflix special, or like a one-off performance, or like a behind-the-scenes film, which is what the pro shot did. So yeah, at the end of the day, I think that's the biggest thing holding 6 back, and the reason why I straight up do not want to see a 6th film. Because we've already kind of got it. Number 2, Operation Mincemeat. Remember when I said that we'd come back to the problems with A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder? Operation Mincemeat has that problem when it comes to adapting itself. Operation Mincemeat obviously explores the real-life story. During World War II, we were struggling, we were losing the war, and our spies risked it all on a corpse, managing to trick the Germans into moving their troops by planting a fake body with fake invasion plans, giving them the wrong intel. This story has so many ups and downs, so many weird turns. It's wacky, it's wild, and the musical presents it in a very, Monty Python, dry British comedy way. And I think if you were ever going to get an Operation Mincemeat film, that's probably the only way you could possibly present it. But you'd lose so much of what Operation Mincemeat is. On stage, that musical is so good for so many different reasons, but one of those reasons is that connection between those 5 people in the cast. Them throwing off little pieces of clothing to become 50 different characters in one scene. It's the magic that happens live on stage as they're multi-rolling and chucking everything off and becoming this. It's scrappy. It's fringe theatre, live on stage in front of you in the heart of the West End, with just a slight extra little bit of budget. If you adapt this into a film, you're gonna kind of lose that element of it. And you lose that, you lose so much of the charm, you lose so much of what makes Operation Mincemeat work. I just don't think it's worth it, honestly. Pro shot? Yes, please. Absolutely. Give me that. My plate is open. Please, sir, may I have some more? But when it comes to a film, I think there's so many hoops to jump through, so many areas where it could go massively wrong, and honestly, the way that they've stylized it on stage just wouldn't translate to film. And so, we come to my number one choice. The number one musical that I do not want to see become a musical film. And this may surprise you, because it is Come From Away. On record as being my favourite musical of all time. You may sit there and go, Ellie, you don't want your favourite musical to become a film? You don't want to be able to watch a film version of your favourite musical? And to that I say, yes, I absolutely do not want to see that. Because I adamantly believe it would not work. And I know that they explored it and came to a similar conclusion as well. Come From Away is the true story of the days after 9/11. After the planes hit, they had so many planes up in the air that they needed to land somewhere. So many people displaced because the American airspace closed down. So they were taken to a small community in Newfoundland, Gander, which had this absolutely giant airport left over from the Cold War, when planes needed to stop over on trips over the Atlantic to refuel. And suddenly, this town with an absolutely tiny population suddenly welcomes the world. It is one of the most gorgeous musicals I have ever seen. It is so life-affirming, it's so beautiful, it is a perfect depiction of the best of humanity, of these times where something absolutely horrific and tragic happens, and we see the worst of the world, and we see how we as people can rise up and do good in the face of it, to fight against that. It is my favourite musical. It is my favourite musical. I am a sucker for musicals about the best of humanity, especially in hard times. Like, one of my favourite plays is Every Brilliant Thing, which has very similar themes of just, like, the beauty of humanity and, like, the best of us, especially when we're going through hard times and struggles. So, if I have this much passion and this much love for this musical, why do I not want to see it become a film? And the simple answer is that I don't see any world where it could work, and where it could work as well as it does on stage. Come From Away is presented on stage by 12 people, but it doesn't feel like that. They're all multi-rolling, they're all jumping between these parts, they make it feel massive. A film version would not be able to do that. So much of it is direct address, so much of it is straight out to the audience, so much of it is little jokes and little moments that they're direct straight out. So, the closest to that in a film language would be a documentary. It would be Talking Head. It would be a glimpse into this afterwards. And I don't think, while that is the closest stylistically, I don't think that would massively click for Come From Away. Because you kind of feel out of it. You kind of feel out of the moment. And them speaking direct to the audience a lot would be very jarring on screen. You'd lose so much of the multi-rolling and the way that they create that community. You'd have to split up all those roles, which could be done, but it's so many creative choices that would have to be made that take you away from what made the musical work in the first place, which kind of places us in a very similar camp to Operation Mincemeat, where I feel like you're just going to lose what Come From Away is. The best course of action for Come From Away is a pro shot, which they saw and they've already done. And it was reported originally that Come From Away was going to become a film, and eventually they backed off those plans and made the pro shot instead. So it kind of goes to show that I'm fully right on this one. Come From Away just wouldn't really work massively on screen, at least not for the same reasons that Come From Away worked on stage. And I treasure that musical so much. I treasure how they do it on stage, where I worry that it wouldn't be the musical I fell in love with. Which is okay, sometimes it can't be. But if we've already kind of got the compromise and a pro shot, do we need it? I don't think so. But that is my list. Do you disagree with any of these choices? Do you have any musicals of your own that you feel like would struggle to adapt themselves to screen? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. If you did enjoy this video, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me out, helps out the channel. Here's some links to some other videos on screen right now, and a link to my Instagram if you'd like to give me a follow over there. And a huge thank you to all of our channel members who support everything I do over here. But that's it for me today, and I hopefully see you next time. Bye!